Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on Fuel Radio. Brendon Watt, our guest today, once subscribed to the idea that in order to be happy, you have to fit a certain mold and follow a set path in life. He was the opposite of his true self and felt as if he was hiding. This led him to being severely depressed and almost hitting rock bottom. Now Brendon is a successful entrepreneur and author. He's passionate about showing people that fitting in is not the secret to happiness, and that unhiding who you are is the key to feeling at peace in yourself. Now, please help me welcome Brendon Watt. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fuel Radio. My guest today is Brendon Watt. Brendon, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Todd, thank you for having me.
We're going to be talking about authenticity and unhiding, and we might get into a little bit about access consciousness. So I'm looking forward to, I didn't do any research on that before starting this conversation, but I am looking forward to finding out more about that. It sounds like maybe it's a bit of a meditative practice, which I'm into. So I'd love to hear more about that.
we do our best just to get people happier, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's start with a bit of background here. It sounds like you were fairly unhappy before you found some tools that helped you make some changes, and it sounds like authenticity and unhiding was a part of that. So how did you arrive at some of these concepts that you're teaching people about and espousing today?
I first found access consciousness was almost 11 years ago, and I would say unhappy is an understatement with that one. I basically spent my whole life trying to fit in, but I always knew I was different. Since the time I was a kid, I was like, I knew I wasn't like other people, but I didn't quite know how to deal with it. So I went, okay, well, it looks like fitting in is what we do. And that's what I started doing. And basically over my life, I'd just given up on me. And I got to a point when I was 30 years old and I just had enough. I'd really just gone, you know what, if this is it, I'm done. I'm unhappy every day. I don't have a sense of hope. I don't want to live. And I actually had a 4-year-old son at the time. And he would wake up next to me. We were sharing a room at my mother's house. And he'd wake up next to me and be like, Dad, what are we doing today? You know, like, and he'd be this ball of joy. And I would be like, how am I gonna show this kid that there's a different world available if I'm not willing to make some different choices? So I just started asking. I just started going, you know what's it going to take for something to show up that gives me more of me? And it was only a couple of days later I found this ad in the paper that was a couple of lines as a invitation to access consciousness, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a try, and I did. And basically my life has just been on a different journey since.
Well, since we've mentioned it, I'm not going to wait.
Bring the elephant in the room out.
Yeah. Just in a nutshell, what is access consciousness?
It's a set of tools and techniques to change anything in your life, but also empower you to know what you know. You know, for so many of us, we're always looking for this answer, but we're not willing to be in the question, which is what allows for everything to contribute to us. And that was the thing that was sticking me big time, was I was told, this is the way you live, this is the way you get happy. You know, you basically get a career, you get married, you have kids, you pay tax, and you die. And I was like, that doesn't sound like much fun. But I did it. You know, I did it to the best of my ability. I did the relationship. I have a son who's now 16, and you know, I started making money. And I remember thinking one day that I was like, once I have $10,000 in the bank, I'll be happy. Like I'll have that sense of happiness. And I remember the day that my bank account hit that, and I went, nothing changed. So it's really just, there's so much to it. I mean, we're in 176 countries around the world now with hundreds of thousands of people, you know, looking into it and using the tools and doing it. And it's, for me, with facilitating it, and with where my life is at now, it's such a gift to see somebody walk in and go, you know what, I'm kind of a little lost right now. I don't really know who I am. I don't really know like what I'm here for. where's the joy? And to walk out of a seminar or get off a telecall or whatever it is that they choose, or a book, to go, wow, I feel like I have a sense of me again. I feel like I have hope again and have that joy in my world that I want to live. And that's one of the greatest gifts for me, is seeing that in people. I just love it.
What's the process like? What's the seminar like?
Well, so one of the first things is the access bars, which is what I found 11 years ago. And it's 32 points on the head. When lightly touched, it's basically like deleting your computer bank. It's getting rid of all the crap that we store in our heads and in our lives, and getting rid of that, and getting rid of all the beliefs and the fixed points of view that we have about stuff. But when I first found this, and so I called this girl, she had 2 lines in the paper that said, all of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory. Call Mel. That was it. And I read it, mate, what? But something just sparked in me. And I was not one for, like, I'd done a lot of seeking my whole life, trying to find something to show me a different way, because I knew what we're shown and what we're told and what we believe. I knew there was more beyond that. I just didn't know how to get to it. And I called this lady and she said, okay, so at worst, it's going to be like you had a great massage, and at best, your whole life is going to change. And I went and I saw this girl, and like I said, I was unhappy to a degree that was pretty extreme. And I went and saw this girl, and I got this session for an hour and a half, and I laid there and just sobbed for an hour and a half. I didn't realize how much sadness and how much stuff that I just had suppressed and held in and just tried to hide from me. And when I had somebody there that was just there with me, she didn't have any judgment of who I should be. She was just there with me. That hour and a half changed my life. And that's where it begun from there. And then we've got lots of, we basically have tools and processes to change anything in your life that's not working. Anything that you want. You know what? I'd like to have this as greater too. I'd like to have more of this in my life. I'd like to actually get up and not go straight into judgment of myself. And that's the thing that was sticking me the most, was every day it was, how can I make myself wrong today? How many ways can I judge myself? And that was a big gift for me, because that's what I thought being alive here was you just judge everything. Everything's about right and wrong. Nothing was about choice. And when I started learning about choice, it was a choice, and that every choice we make is creating our lives. And I heard this in one of the seminars, and I went, wait a minute. So if my life is this messed up right now because I've chosen it, you mean I could make some different choices? And I did, and I started doing that, and my life just has gotten bigger and more like me ever since.
It sounds like fitting in was a big part of one of your strategies for happiness.
Big time.
And so you eventually got to the point, or this course or whatever convinced you to stop trying to fit in. And so why do we need to stop trying to fit in, and in order to start being happy?
Well, I think we give up so much of us in order to fit in. Like we stop that exploration of who we are, basically. And then we start creating ourselves on this image. Like for me, as a kid, I knew I was different, but I also didn't see anywhere where that fit into anything. So I started going, okay, so what? And I started creating myself as what I thought other people would like, what other people would accept, basically what was acceptable. And in order to create that image, I had to give up everything that I actually liked about myself. With social media being the way it is, like we look to others to how to be rather than looking to us and going, okay, what would I like to be in this world? And the thing that I see is where the joy comes from is we are all different. We're all unique in who we are, yet for a lot of us, we try and be like other people, or we try and fit in, or we try and follow, or we try and see where we fit into that structure, rather than going on that exploration of, if I was being me, who would I be? What would I choose? And it's just it's a different space to live by. And it's definitely the joy that comes with it is the space that starts showing up in your life that you can live as. Like when you have, I mean, for me, when I don't go to this place of I'm wrong, but actually have gratitude for me, that's when I get this sense of joy in my world. And that's when I know, for me personally, I contribute to everybody else around me based on my willingness to know who I am. And that's what I see a lot of us do, is we kind of shut ourselves off to protect this image, and we keep all the things that we've decided is bad or terrible or wrong about us hidden from us, and then we have to try and prove against it, rather than, you know what, look, for me, I have my shit too. Like I have things that aren't quite perfect, definitely not perfect. I've tried to be perfect, that didn't work, but it's like, but it keeps us in this place of judgment constantly. That's where the joy goes.
Yeah. Just go back to your story just for a sec. I shouldn't have jumped off that so quickly. So you went to this one session and you cried it out.
I did.
And you said it changed your life. What kind of happened after that?
Well, so after that, I went and sat in my car because I drove to see this girl. I went and sat in my car and I just sat there. I didn't even start it. And I didn't even know why. Like I had no expectation of what was about to show up. I just knew that there was something that this girl was offering that could create change for me. And I sat in my car and I had that sense of me again. I just had this sense of peace in my world that hadn't been there for a long time. And that was the thing for me, was I was in a constant state of conflict with myself because I knew I was different, but I was trying to be normal. So it was this constant fight against me. And so after that, I kept going back and getting sessions with this girl once a week for, I think, a couple of months. And like I said, I was staying at my mum's house at the time. And after a couple of months, she went, "What are you doing?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You're happier again. You're happy again." And I was like, and she started changing as I was changing, and she wasn't even doing it yet. Just me being more of me. She started getting to be more of her, and that was, so that's pretty much where it happened. And then I went, you know what, I need more of this. I'm going for more of me, and it basically, I just started on that journey to creating my life with a lot more consciousness in it, rather than the place where I was functioning from, which was judgment.
I'm wondering if you could define for us, you've mentioned this a few times in what you've been saying, is, and it's in your notes as well. You talk about the true self, and you've mentioned you got to be me. And we see little memes about that all the time as well, right?
We have no idea what it means.
We have no idea what it means. So I'm just wondering what it means to you, because I mean, I can sure identify with that. Like, and I think most people do, who am I? And then different people have all kinds of different opinions on what that is. So I'm wondering what that is, what that means to you.
Well, the piece of information that I'd heard this for quite a while, but I didn't really let it sink in until not that long ago, was when you're truly being you, it feels like nothing. It doesn't have a feeling to it. You don't feel it the way that you feel it when you create from an image. So I'd be like, oh, I don't feel like anything, so I mustn't be being me. But when you're being you, you actually have that space to choose anything. And that was a tough one to start getting, because I was, I liked the, a little bit of drama in my life where I had all of these feelings and stuff. But one of the things with being is you get to create yourself constantly. When you're being you get to go, okay, so if yesterday wasn't the sum total of who I am today, what would I create myself as? So, and this is that thing with the exploration. And one of the questions that I started asking every day is, okay, so who am I today, and what grand and glorious adventures can I have? And start creating myself from that space. Not, well, I was this person yesterday, now I have to keep maintaining who I was in the past in order to be what I've decided I need to be in the future. It allows for you to, because a lot of us, we kind of, like if you do something that you judge is wrong, you'll go, oh my goodness, like I can't believe that, rather than go, okay, so that was probably not my best choice. And do I really desire to choose that as me, or would I like to make a different choice? And it gives you the freedom to create yourself, which is the beautiful thing about it, rather than be stuck in everything that, once again, the stuff that we judge about us.
I like that idea of starting fresh every day. I mean, I think sometimes when we do it to ourselves, we put ourselves in a box. We say, I should speak personally. I would say to myself, I'm created to be this, therefore I got to do this, or worse yet, so-and-so sees me as this and wants me to be this, then I'm going to try and, like you mentioned about trying to please other people and that sort of thing, then I'm going to try to be that what this person thinks I'm going to be. But it sounds like when the basis for yourself is nothing, you get to start each day with sort of a clean state. It sounds like it sounds like it's more of an intuitive journey. Like, okay, what do I want to be today? And then just take the next step. Am I tracking with you? Or
you were definitely tracking with this, and you're definitely not just speaking for yourself on that one. And it's like, sure. This is what I see with most people. And the thing that, because with that being and knowing that you can create yourself every day, it doesn't have any predictability to it. And that's why most of us go, oh, I don't really want to choose that, because I kind of like having my future predetermined. I like to know that I can bring the past with me so that I know who I'm going to be in the future, or what I'll have, or what's right to have, or whatever that is. But we basically try and determine and predetermine what our future is going to be, so we know how to show up every day. And I think we can recognize that recently, with what's going on in the world, is there is no safety with anything. There's basically, the world is changing, and if we're not willing to change with it and be something different, then that's where a lot of us get ourselves into trouble. And a lot of the unhappiness comes from is that thing of, well, that future that I just planned for the next 20 years is now gone. That doesn't become an issue when you're being, you go, oh, okay, now what will I create? And it can be uncomfortable, because with that, you're also constantly in this place of moving on quicksand. You basically are choosing your life in every moment, which can be an uncomfortable thing for a lot of people, because it's like, oh, well, can't I just like make a choice and then just have that as what I've chosen, rather than making a choice and recognizing that if you're willing to be present in your life like that, then you recognize that you can change in any moment.
So what was it like for you? Like, I think it is difficult to make that shift. What was the shift like for you, where you were trying to please everybody and to moving into more of this sort of this intuitive state? Was it difficult for you? It sounds like you were pretty desperate at the time, but I'm sure there was, you hit some crossroads along the way where it wasn't so easy.
You want me to be honest? It was horrifying. It was horrifying, because it's like, I'd got to a point. I mean, I was a tradesman in Australia. I was basically this Aussie bloke. And then so from one day, it was like, and I had I was a tradesman also, like had a tiling business doing bathrooms and stuff like that in Australia. So I created my image as the Aussie bloke. Now Aussie bloke goes into this completely different thing where it's like, you know what, I'd like to change my life. I'd like to be something more than what I've made myself as. And I got a lot of, judgment from a lot of people who I thought were friends at the time, which would say, you know what, why are you doing that rubbish? Like, you should just be happy. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not. So it was really uncomfortable, but also so rewarding in every moment, because I knew that I was on a different path. And I think that's the thing a lot of us give up on, is we give up our knowing what's true for us for somebody else's idea of what's true for them, or what we should be in their lives. And like you said, with the things that, somebody needs me to be this and somebody needs me to be that. So we're constantly, we have our basically our energetic radar going out there going, okay, so what does this person need me to be? What does this person need me to be? And oftentimes we create our lives like that. And that's when the unhappiness comes, is when you get to a point where you go, you know what? Where did the kindness for me go? And this is where with that, see, we give up on the kindness for us, the gratitude for us, all of that. And then we wonder why we can't have it for everything in our lives, because we don't have it for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I've explored this quite a bit, and I know that I'm absolutely my worst critic. I think I've come a long ways, but
you and I both.
And it leads to so many of my difficulties in life, because it's a cycle, right? You feel bad, then you try to become happy, but the things that I'll just, again, speak personally, the things that I turn to in order to become happier often are addictive, or actually aren't healthy, and maybe are temporary. They might solve the problem for a few hours or whatever.
I hear you.
Depending on how much I have to drink, right?
Yep.
So anyways, it is sort of a vicious cycle. A question that's coming to mind is, you've mentioned judgment a few times too.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how would you recommend people deal with judgment? Is that something that you think falls away as people begin to appreciate themselves and love themselves more? Or, is there some other technique that you apply? Or maybe
I wish there was a magical wand for this one.
Well, I think most people are like me, and their first mode, the first reaction is judgment. Like, just walk to the store, or just get in your car, or just go to a public event, which we haven't done too much the last couple of years. But I think most people, if they were honest, would say, I judge first instead of accepting first, or just even being open or whatever. Like, so just if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them.
Well, the thing that you said there about rather than being honest with themselves, that's a really good place to start from, and go, you know what, I'm gonna do my best today to push down all these. See, because the thing that we do with judgment is we basically build all of these walls up with it around us, going, I am this, this is what's wrong, this is what's right about me. And it's going, but we don't acknowledge it. We don't acknowledge the judgment. And for me, it is still a daily ongoing thing that I'm looking at, because I still do it. I still have things in my life where I go, you know what, I'm wrong for that, or I'm right for that. But I also know myself. I know who I am well enough now to know that it doesn't create anything. It destroys you. It destroys you.
Yeah.
Like, we all know that when we, like, you might be having a great time, and then all of a sudden, like, something will show up, or somebody will say something, or you'll get a flash from the past, or whatever it is, and you'll go into that place of judgment of you. Our worlds compress, but for a lot of us, and for a lot of us seekers in the world who have always known, there's got to be something different beyond this. It just has to be. It's like, we are the people that make ourselves the most wrong.
Yeah.
And it is this thing where being honest enough with yourself to go, you know what, okay, I'd really like to change this. And then start recognizing when you're doing it, and going, okay, so what would it be like here if I was being me right now? And if I had gratitude for me, what would I choose? And being present enough in your life just to stop. Because that's the thing that we've kind of given up on, is we're not really present in our lives. We get into this thing of autopilot and go, okay, this is the way everything works. This is the way I'm going to live, rather than being present in every moment. And like we were talking about before with okay, so what could I choose now that would be different? And making different choices with it, and recognizing that don't judge yourself for judging yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing we'll do. We'll go, oh my God,
Right.
now I'm wrong again. I've been judging myself today, so I'm wrong again, rather than just go, okay, it's
Yeah.
and so so many different tools. But one of the things is secret, because we fixate on our judgments. We'll fixate on one thing, and then we'll use that point of view that we have that's fixed to create the reality around it, to have that be what's real and true for us.
Mhm.
The tool with this is every time that comes up, like if there's judgments about you coming up, or judgments that you have of your relationship or your money or your work or whatever, interesting point of view, I have this point of view, every time that point of view comes up, so that you start getting rid of all these solid places in your life that you've decided is what is when it isn't. And being present with that, and just go, you know what, interesting point of view, I have this point of view, until you start getting that space again of, okay, so if I wasn't judging this, then what would I choose?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to lie with this either. It takes work. I've been
Sure.
doing this for 11 years and I'm still going, oh man, I'm still choosing that. What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but it is a choice. And I do know there's a different possibility available, but you have to be willing to be different enough to choose it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a different possibility. And maybe it's part of our human nature to judge first, and but that doesn't mean that it can't be changed, or it's not something that we don't have the ability to work on and
Yeah.
live differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you talk a lot about authenticity and unhiding. I'm just wondering, what is the difference to you? You mentioned it in your notes again, is um, there's a difference between authenticity and unhiding, especially because authenticity is such a buzzword today. But
It is, right?
yeah, for
I
sure.
noticed that. It's getting used a lot. But it's like, well, for me, the thing with authenticity is a lot of the times we have to prove that we're authentic. So we're still doing that same thing of, it's like projecting some image of ourselves to, this is my authentic self, or this is the genuine me,
Hmm.
with this idea that you need to be something that other people can receive in order to be you. And the unhiding, the unhiding thing is, that's where, like we've talked about, is getting really honest with yourself. Like I've had things that have come up. This has been, like I said, I've been doing this for 11 years now, but probably a lot more stuff has come up for me in the last 6 to 12 months with a lot of the stuff that I was hiding from me. Like I didn't realize how much I still had hidden from myself, which
Hmm.
was all of the things that I was judging as wrong about. Because the thing that we do with it too is we oftentimes prove the opposite of what we've decided we are. So if you've got this thing of, you know what, I'm actually like, I really have a point of view somewhere that I'm a terrible person. So then we try and prove that we're a nice person to be authentic or to show up like that, rather than dig a little deeper under that lie of, you know what, I really have this judgment of myself that I'm like somewhere not a nice person. Is once you start removing that judgment and getting underneath that, everything has a gift to it once we take the judgment away. And that's what I've noticed too, is it's like, oh, you know, maybe I wasn't so wrong for that, but we learn it. Judgment is something that we learn, you know, like, so if you're a kid and you're like, you know, you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I love me, like I just love me, and somebody says you love yourself too much, or you shouldn't love yourself that much, then that's when we start learning, okay, I need to start turning myself down. Or you're running around and you're just happy and you just, you know, everything's just like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, and you're being a kid and you get told you're being too much. That's when we start to put these limits on ourselves rather than exploring who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
it's basically just something that we're taught here. And like you said before about the thing with like judgment is the vicious cycle, it is a cycle that we can break, but it has to start with us.
Mm-hmm.
It has to start with us giving up on the judgment and actually choosing something different, rather than going, you know what, okay, well, everybody else is doing it, so I might as well too.
Yeah. It sounds like what you're saying is unhiding is being willing to face and do the work and to face those kinds of things. Like we've been talking a lot about judgment. So
Yeah.
unhiding would be, hey, you know what? I'm admitting to yourself, I am judgmental sometimes, or a lot
Yeah.
of the time, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or yeah, and all of the things that, I mean, for me, there was a lot of things in my past that I kind of just hidden from myself that I was still energetically to a degree stuck in, where I was like, like things would show up in the relationships that I chose based on the way that I saw relationships and how they were chosen when I was a kid. And there was so many of these different things. I was like, don't look at that, don't look at that, don't look at that. But we keep ourselves kind of attached to it, but then we don't realize, and then we're going, wait, why is my life showing up like this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't I get my relationship to work? Or why can't I seem to have any success with finances? And I mean, it was years and years ago for me where money was not an easy thing for me. And one day I was sitting there looking at it and going, okay, so if I was really looking at this and being honest with me, what do I hate about money? Because the thing is if we something that we're not creating in our lives that we say we want, there's something off there. There's something that, because if we actually desired to create it, we would. So I started asking this question of, okay, so what do I hate about money? And the thing that came up for me was conflict. And I went, what? Conflict? And then I looked at it, and basically when I was a kid, whenever money was mentioned or money was just in the air, it was conflict. It was fight. There was always fighting around money. So I remembered that as a kid, I went, you know what? If this is what money equals, I don't want conflict in my life. I don't want to fight with people. I'm just not going to have money. When I got to that one part, my whole financial reality changed, because I looked at it and went, you know what? That's not even my point of view. But this is where I see a lot of us stick ourselves, is we learn these things, or we see what's going on around us. We see the people judging, and then we just go, oh, so that's what I do, rather than, okay, what's true for me here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
so I can see yourself unhiding yourself from money there, and
yeah, big
it
time.
making a difference. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great. You make this provocative statement that people shouldn't say "fake it till you make it." So I've encountered that statement in a lot of different circles. Recovery, success literature. We see it sometimes with guys in marketing with, the fake cars, and that's probably the worst example of it. But why do you say that?
good question, because I don't ever remember saying that.
Oh,
I
okay.
when I basically, the way I've created my life is I go like, well, let me put it this way. 3.5 years ago, I started working with this company, Access Consciousness, and was doing no, well, 3.5 years ago, I was already working with them. I started working with them about 7 years ago and was doing schedule stuff. Then I was doing audio and sound stuff. I had no idea how to do any of that. And then 3.5 years ago, I was asked to be one of 4 speakers worldwide that could facilitate that facilitates the advanced class in Access Consciousness, which is called Choice of Possibilities. And I was horrified. I went, me? Why me? Why me? How am I going to help people with their lives? My point of view about me is I'm still a mess. There's still so much wrong with me, but I knew I could do it, and I didn't know how I was going to. I just said yes, and it's been an interesting journey since. But to a degree, see, for a lot of us, we try and figure out what we need to be in order to choose something, or what we need to figure out first, rather than just go, okay, this actually matches the energy of what I'd like to choose, choosing it, and then allowing the universe to go, okay, here's everything you need to know about it. And that's that thing of with being you, it's this continuous adventure and exploration of everything that that doesn't even necessarily make sense to you. When you just you know when to call somebody, or you know what's up for somebody, or somebody asks a question and you have information that you're like, where did that come from? Or something comes out of your mouth that you know about something that you didn't necessarily learn. That's what we have as our knowing when we're being us. And so the fake it until you make it thing, to a degree, I kind of did that. I just didn't make it. I went, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Let me just, I'll get in there and I'll figure it out as I go. But that's the beautiful thing about being, is you don't have to there's no finish line to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no end point to being you. When finally one day you can get to a point and go, okay, finally, I'm being everything that I am, because you as a being, for all of us, we're constantly evolving if we choose to become something greater.
Cool. I love hearing client stories, and I'm sure you have tons of them, of people who've taken the course. But I'm wondering if there's maybe one or two people that come to mind that have undergone quite a remarkable transformation that you wouldn't mind talking about, anonymously, of course.
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
So many. I'm trying to think of, I mean, geez, every class is something different. I mean, I just did a 6-call telecall called No More Hiding, talking about this topic. And it was this journey over 6 weeks, 1 call a week with a couple of hundred people on there. And I said, hey guys, I'm facilitating this with you, but I'm going on the journey too, because for me, every day is that unhiding thing. So it was like to get the feedback from that of people going, you know what, this was really, there's points where this was really uncomfortable, but I have so much more of me. And that's the gift that I see with everybody who just, it's not, we've spent so much of our lives trying to figure out how to get somewhere. Like we'll go, okay, so now how am I going to be me? And we'll go into our minds rather than be the question, but also allow ourselves to receive it and go, you know what? I would really like to get out of judgment of me. Universe, will you please show me the way to this? Will you please contribute to this? And then living our lives. We've made it so much about using our minds to figure it out. And we basically eliminate the magic that we are. You know, when you can ask for something to show up and then just receive it. Like I know for me, I've had so many, and this is off track to the question, but I still don't remember one person in particular but I know for me, like the times in my life where everything just showed up as if by magic was when I was being me. Yeah, and that's the gift that I see people get. And I mean, well, I've had, you know, people in seminars that I've done with, you know, who have been through a lot of abuse as a kid, and they're locked up in it, you know, and then we work on that, and they look different. Their whole world shifts because it's something that they were stuck in, something that they were making themselves wrong for, or still had all of this stuff attached to. And when they get free of that, they're just like, oh God, I feel like I have me again. And that to me is just, it's a beautiful thing to be part of.
Awesome. What do you think we're hiding from?
Us, how different we are.
Yeah. We don't want to be known as different, or.
Well, how many people do you know that actually want to stand out?
Yeah.
Like as a kid, I stood out. I was different and I knew it. I mean, I was like, I ain't nothing like any of you people. But then when I realized that it didn't work at school, basically when I started grade 1, I didn't have any friends. You know, I was getting bullied. I basically would just sit on my own and just, I didn't know how to function. So I went, okay, so if I'm going to have friends, I need to be normal. And that's what I see a lot of us do, is we try and find where we fit rather than being that uniqueness of us. You know, it
starts young. Hey, we are kind of conditioned at a young age. It's almost a natural thing in elementary school, and then in high school we spend all of our young years trying to fit in. You're right. We don't want to stand out. Anybody that stands out gets bullied or whatever, or picked on.
basically, and you're taught to have the answer rather than, like, we're not taught to be the question with anything. We're taught to, okay, this is the answer to this. This is right. This is wrong. This is how you get to this, rather than what do you know? And that's the thing I love about Access Consciousness, is the tagline to it is empowering you to know what you know. And that's where we start accessing the gift that we are. Because I don't know about you, but nobody had ever asked me that question. You know, what do you know about this? What's true for you? It was never about that. It was, this is how it is. This is the answer you've got to come to. This is just how it works here. But there was never any change available with that. It always had to be a certain way. And I see, like, we've given up a lot on what we actually have the capacity to change in order to fit in, rather than go, you know what, I am different. I'm going to choose to be me. And yeah, it just, it's way more fun.
Yeah. Well, this certainly seems to be a theme lately. Not my last guest, but the guest before that, Whitney Freya. I actually posted a segment of her video last night, and it was all about how to capitalize on big. She didn't use this terminology. This is the title I gave to it, but how do you capitalize on big ideas? And essentially she was just saying, you know, if it makes you excited, you know, that might be something. And then if something, you know, if this is sort of looking outside yourself, but if something comes at you that sort of comes out of nowhere and confirms it. And then her last step was to just take one step at a time, like intuitively just take, what's the next step? And she was saying that what keeps us so often from accomplishing our big ideas or giving up on them is we look way down the road and we look at everything that's got to happen between here and there, instead of just saying, like you're saying, tie it back into what you're saying, you know, what do I know? What's next? What's the next best thing to do?
Yeah. And that's where we slow ourselves down a lot, is we'll have something that we'd like to choose or we'd like to create, but then we try and wait for all the lights to turn green before we even start the car, called our life. Like, we'll be like, well, I have to get this right. I have to get this right. Now I have to see if it's going to work for this person, or if they're going to be okay with me, or if they're going to like me, or if they're going to, you know, we go into this whole thing with our heads of what's got to show up before we can choose, rather than just choose to get the awareness. And I think what she said was brilliant, because one of the, like, what I did years ago when I started looking at, okay, I'd like a different life, was I started getting a sense of the energy that I'd like my life to be like. I knew I wanted to contribute to people's lives. I knew that I wanted to travel the world more. I knew that I wanted to be happy and have gratitude for my life. And I started like looking at all of these elements of what I'd like to have in my life. And then I just started asking for them to show up. And I started pulling energy, and you just ask for it, just pulling energy from all over the universe into that. And then anything that shows up that has that sense of that energy, you choose it. And it was amazing how quickly my life started changing, because it is that taking one step at a time and just going, okay, so if I put one foot in front of the other, you know that you know that your desire is to create something greater called your life, and being more of you and having more of that, then you start trusting you to know that you're going to move in the right direction.
What would you say to people that just are kind of in a negative mode most of the time, and they know it? Like they just, you're talking about energy and pulling that in, but it's been their MO for most of their lives, that they feel like they're never going to be able to change their energy. They know and feel like it. I'm not saying it's true for them, but they know and they feel like, hey, I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not going to, I can't, my energy is never going to shift. What would you say to a person that's feeling that way?
Well, first of all, ask, okay, so would you like to change it? Because one of the things I've learned, and I can honestly say this, because there's been a lot of things in my life that I go, I'd really like to change this, but then I don't make a different choice, or I keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right.
And I know that's where this honesty with self comes in, is I go, okay, so the question that I ask a lot of people and myself is, okay, what do I love about this?
Mm.
Because that's the other thing, is when something keeps showing up in your life, there's something that you love about it. And it was only recently that talking about judgment, I started looking at, okay, so what do I love about making myself wrong when that energy comes up? Because for me, I know, because my world compresses. And I started looking at that and I was like, oh, it kind of gives me this area where I can slow down in my life. So just that, see, because we can't change anything that we don't acknowledge as true for us. And that's why we keep going through life going, you know what, I'd really like to change this, but it's showing up every day and I keep choosing it. Okay, is it true that you'd like to change it, or do you actually love it? And when I got this has given me a lot of freedom, because there's a lot of things in my life where I went, well, now that I'm like on this journey of choosing more consciousness, then I can't I should get it right, and I should show up as this right image, this right person in the world. And it was one of the things for me, one of the big things for me that was just stopping me dynamically, because I wasn't willing to look at it and go, okay, so if nothing was right, nothing was wrong, what am I trying to create with this? And and that's that place, switching your point of view and looking at it for what it is and go, okay, you know what? I kind of like being depressed, because it gives me control over, it gives me control over people, because then people want to make me happy all the time. And I kind of like that feeling, or whatever it is. But if there was no judgment to it and you went, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, because that made me lighter, and that's the other thing. Another tool is what's heavy is what's not true for you. Anything that's light in your world is actually what's true for you. And when you get to that bit and you go, oh, they kind of lighten my world up, now you've got a space from which you can change it.
Boy, some great advice in there. Yeah. So what's light for you is for you, and what's heavy is not.
And this is a big one with what's going on in the world right now, because a lot of us are,
we're choosing heavy things. It seems like we're almost. I have a friend who's big into recovery, and he actually said this to me one time. He said, Rod, your problem is that you're addicted to being down. And it took me a long time to embrace that, but eventually it was like, yeah, there's some truth to that. Like you said, that's a great question. What do I love about being down? What do I love about being this person that is maybe negative or whatever, right? That's a great question. I cut you off there. You were about to say something.
Well, no, now I can't even remember what I was about to say.
I feel like I could see it happening. I could see it erasing it.
Well, you just reminded me of something else, because
talk about that then. Yeah.
Well, this is that space of authenticity that I was so avoiding being for a long time. Like I said, when I got this, when I started facilitating these advanced classes a few years ago, I went, okay, now I've got to build the image as like this amazing facilitator and blah, blah, blah. And once again, I started losing me, because that's the thing that we do with image, is we replace it with another image. We go, okay, well, that one's tiring now. Now that I've got this new job, or now that I've got this new relationship, or now that I've got kids, or now that I've whatever, now what kind of image do I need to build? And that's what we spend most of our energy doing, is building our images. And I was having a conversation with Gary Douglas, the founder, the founder of Access Consciousness, and a couple of years ago, and I was having a lot of unhappiness show up in my life. I was just like, I'm just depressed all the time, still, with using these tools. And he said, well, you love being unhappy, because then you can manipulate other people into getting them to do everything that you want them to do. And I went, oh. And I realized that is true. But see, once again, without that awareness, without that acknowledgement, we keep going down the same path. And I went, oh, you're right. I actually learned that as a kid. I learned that if I was happy, that nobody would be there for me. When I was unhappy, then people would be there for me.
Yeah.
So we don't even know where we pick it up from, but we're living our lives based on what we've decided we are when we're not. And this is,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, this thing of like being really honest with yourself this has been a tough one for me lately, because like I said, that image that I built, and then getting on and like basically, exposing, yourself to other people and go, you know what, this shows up for me too. I judge myself too, and I'm doing my best to change it. And here's what else is possible. But that's where we start going beyond this image and actually into being us. And then someone will go, oh my God, I've been hiding that from myself for 20 years. Thank you so much for exposing that. Because when we set ourselves free, that's when we open the door for everybody else to go, oh, wow, if you can change it, now I can actually change it too.
I'm thinking right back to the beginning of when we started talking. Is it like when you mentioned you're a facilitator now, you have to put this energy into being this this facilitator, and you know and then you start thinking, oh, what does a facilitator's life look like, and what do I want people to know, what don't I want people to know? But then you mentioned that your true self, or me, is actually nothing. I mean, and who wants to be that? Like, if your identity was with being just you, just me, just nothing, that's a far cry from, and there's no energy that has to go into that.
No, because
right?
you have nothing to hide. Like, we're using 99% of our energy to hide everything from us that's true for us.
Yeah.
When you have that, you can get on and go, yeah, I'm a facilitator, but you know, I'm having a shitty day too, or whatever's going on. But you're the willingness to just expose everything and just go. And this, the other thing that people get a little twisted in with this is, it's not about going around telling everybody what you've decided is wrong with you.
I was going to ask you about that. I think that's yeah. I think people, you know, stop at that point. Like, well, I mean, you mean I got to talk about this? I think that's
no,
that's hard for people. Yeah.
But it's like, but I knew for me, in order to set people free in the way that I have a capacity for, I needed to be that honest with myself and know that I'll know if I can talk about something or can't talk about something, or if it can be received or not received. But it's not about exposing you to everybody else. It's about exposing you to you. And that's the big difference, because it's like, because that's where we've gone off from the start, as we go, okay, here's what's true for me. And then somebody goes, you know what, that's bad, that's wrong, that's whatever. And then you go, okay, that's bad, that's wrong, let me hide it from you.
Yeah. It's really hard to find those people that you can talk to in that way, that they're going to accept you no matter what. I think that's the power of recovery, actually, is you do find people that are in similar situations, like you have experienced the same things that you have. And generally, I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule, but generally it's a pretty safe place to talk, or therapy or whatever. So yeah, I always say to people, choose your counselors wisely. But in the very least, like you're saying, I think it's important that we at least admit this stuff to ourselves.
Yeah, that thing of getting honest with you, and even when that energy comes up of like, you're just like, when it's really uncomfortable, you know, and you go, I don't want to look at that, or I don't even want to be present with that energy. When it's just like, take another step would be my advice with that. Is just take another step into it and go, okay, so if this wasn't wrong, then what could I be with this? And that's the other thing with unhiding yourself is, please, if you're looking at this or making these choices to be more of who you are, please be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Because that's we tend to torture ourselves far too much, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had a major epiphany regarding that at one time, but I won't share it right now.
But now we're intrigued.
Well, I don't want to take away from your time. That's why I don't want to.
Oh, please go for it.
So it was a day where I really realized I didn't love myself very much. And I was actually listening to a podcast, and no, I wasn't. I listened to a speech. A guy talked about how he'd been abused as a child, and then, you know, that ended up in infidelity, and his wife, they decided to stay together, but she was just so hard on him for like 10 years. Wow. And then finally in therapy at one time, the therapist kindly said, you know, you need to his spouse, it's time, you know, it just was the right time. after 10 years or whatever. And then secondly, I was driving. So I listened to that at lunchtime, and then I'm driving home and I'm on this coaching call, and the coach says, stop, stop, stop. He was asking people, coaches, why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, what I'm hearing is basically you're helping people love themselves more. And that's when just whoosh, what actually hit me was I don't love myself at all. So I'm driving down the road just crying. And it was one of those moments. It was one of those moments where you have this epiphany and it just hits you, call it spirit or whatever. And I just cried all the way home. And sort of my life flashed before my eyes on how hard I am on myself and how much I judge myself and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that came to mind was just struggling in my relationship with my spouse. And I just realized, and I think this really encapsulates what you've been talking about. So maybe this is a good way to almost wrap up here.
Yeah.
Is that I realized I couldn't love her the way she wanted to be loved because I didn't love myself. I didn't have that. I wasn't loving myself, and therefore didn't have the capacity even to love her the way she deserved to be loved. So
yeah, and well said.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is it's like it begins with us. Like you said, it's like, when I've realized it too, when I go, you know what, I treat myself like shit sometimes.
Yeah.
And but that's okay. But it's, once again, it's getting to that point where you're actually willing to have the awareness for yourself and go, you know what, I'm done with treating myself like shit. I need to start being kinder to me. And the thing you said, perfect and beautiful, about we can't love other people if we don't choose that for us. If we don't love ourselves or care about ourselves, we can't have that caring for other people.
Yeah. I wonder if a lot of the animosity in the world is because it's coming from people that, well, I mean, like myself, who there's something about us that we really don't love. And so that makes it really difficult for us to love others. And then we take it out on others or whatever, unconsciously or whatever. So,
yeah. And I could talk about that for days too, because there's a lot of, there's a lot we can change in the world right now, but we have to be willing to be as different as we are, and be willing to be the people who go, you know what, I'm going to have that caring for me, and I'm going to get out. I'm going to do my best to actually start getting out of this place where I judge myself. Like, even if 10% of the population on the planet right now got out of judgment, or it's not even about getting out of judgment, it's the willingness to just work on it and work through it when it comes up. Because it's like, we're all going to have a few judgments of ourselves. This, like, the thing of, I'm going to get rid of all of them. Well, let's not start there. Let's just start with but it's like, for me, I get a sense of how much more space would be available in our world if there was that many people willing to go, you know what, I see judgment as only destruction. I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it for me. And I'm going to get out of this place where I function from that. And that's where I guess we need to be us.
Excellent. I think that's a good way to wrap up. And thank you so much for your time today, Brendon.
Thank you for having me.
I hope people followed along. We were all over the place. I think it was, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope our listeners do too. It's always in the back of my mind as we're talking. It's like, are the listeners going to be tracking with us? I sure hope so. But I appreciate your time. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
They can find me on brendonwatt.com.
Excellent.
Or they can look up accessconsciousness.com, which has got a bunch of facilitators around the world, a lot of free stuff. And you basically Google it, you'll get thousands of videos on different things that different facilitators have done. And there's a lot of info out there. So check it out if it sounds fun.
Cool. I will say, as I was looking at your website, are you still doing a lot of relationship work, or is that part of the Access Consciousness?
But that's part with them. That's part with them also. But I do one of the things I do is a seminar called Relationships Done Different, and also I wrote a book with my ex-partner, who I'm still great friends with, called Relationship. Are you sure you want one?
Great. That's great. That's great. That's bringing up all sorts of questions. I got to stop myself. That's good.
Well, we can have another show then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the meantime, people can check out your website and find out more.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Thanks again, Brandon.
Oh, thank you.